This is the first lesson on how to read music. So the first thing that you need to know is that when we write music, we actually write it on 5 horizontal lines. And when you count those lines, you always count from the bottom up. The reason for this is that if I asked you to put a note on the second line, you would know that it's the second line from the bottom, not this line here. And that's the same for everybody. So we just all know exactly what we're talking about when we say the second line, the third line, and so forth. There's 5 lines, and there's also 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. Now, before we can actually give them a letter name, we have to realize that when you give letter names, you're only going to use the first few letters of the alphabet. Those are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. There are no H notes, no I notes, or anything past G. Once you get to G, you're going to start over at A again. So where do those notes go on these 5 lines? Well, we're just going to use this type of note today to determine where the note is. That's the easiest type of note to draw. It's a whole note, which we'll talk about later. But it can be 2 places. It can either be on a line, which means it's going to have the line going right through it. I like to think of a Valentine's Day heart with an arrow going through it. Or it could be in a space, which means it's between 2 lines. Now, I can't give it a letter name yet. What I need next is something called a clef. And a clef is a symbol in music that names a staff. So it has a job. You've probably seen one before. You've probably seen this one. It's a sign that we always kind of attribute to being part of music, but it actually has a job. Its name is treble clef or G clef. And I'm going to use the word G clef as much as I can remember to today because it's actually more important to know that when you are naming notes with letters. So once you have your 5 lines, you're going to want to put your clef on there, which is really a fancy G. It has to go so it's pointing out this second line. If you've ever played a game where you might get a targeter that looks like this, you'll understand how this tells you where G is, because there's one of those right here, showing us where that second line is, that it's G. Now you may have learned in elementary school a little saying, every good boy does fine, which told you that the first letters of these lines are E, G, B, D, F. And then you may also have learned that the spaces spell face, F, A, C, E. What you probably would never were told is that it's just in alphabetical order. A, B, C, D, E, F. But it starts here at E, E, F, G. And remember when I said we get to G, we start over at A. So what you want to make sure you are seeing is where that circle part of the note, or the note head is what we call it, is on these lines to tell you what the name of the note is. So, if we know that this bottom line is E, any note that has that bottom line going through it will be an E. If this top line we know is F, because every good boy does fine, any note, no matter what it looks like, with the circle part of the note on that line will be an F. That pretty much sums up all you need to know for a beginner to learn to know how to name notes with letter names.